Have you ever felt just, totally baffled by someone's behavior?
Oh, definitely.
Like when a friend acts completely out of character, or maybe a colleague suddenly lashes out, or even when your own emotions seem to just hijack your good intentions and you're left thinking, where did that come from? Something just came over me.
Right. It's an incredibly common experience, isn't it? That feeling of confusion, maybe even helplessness sometimes.
Totally.
We're often caught off guard when people, and yeah, that includes ourselves, act in ways that just, defy expectation, especially when their actions kind of contradict that pleasant social mask that they usually wear.
Exactly. Those moments where you're just left scratching your head, trying to make sense of what just happened, wondering about the hidden strings pulling the puppets, so to speak.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, today we're going to dive deep into Robert Greene's incredible work, The Laws of Human Nature. And this isn't just a book, really. It's a profound exploration into the hidden forces that truly drive human behavior, not just in others, but crucially within ourselves, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And our mission for you, the listener, is really to try and distill the most potent, the most actionable insights from this material.
Okay.
Think of this as maybe your fast track to navigating the intricate dance of human interaction, equipping you with a sharper lens to view the world through.
Right.
And ultimately maybe guiding you towards a greater sense of self-mastery. We'll delve into some surprising facts, explore some fascinating historical anecdotes, and hopefully reveal practical strategies that can genuinely help you navigate the often tricky social dynamics of life.
And let's be really clear from the start here. This deep dive isn't about manipulation.
No, not at all.
It's about clarity. It's about recognizing the deeper, often unseen patterns that influence all of us so you can be more effective, maybe more resilient, and less susceptible to the dramas and deceptions that kind of swirl around us every day. We're going to help you understand the foundational elements of human nature as described by Greene. And by doing that, perhaps unlock a greater capacity to build a more fulfilling and purposeful life. So let's start by unpacking why we so often feel caught off guard, by ourselves and by others. Okay, so we're talking about those moments where we're just caught off guard, right? By behavior that seems to come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Greene describes how people can hit us with these elaborate cover stories, or they blame handy scapegoats, and suddenly we're drawn into this drama that they seem to control.
Right, you feel powerless.
Exactly. We protest, we get angry, but the damage is done and it feels like we're powerless. Then, boom, it happens again with someone else.
Or even worse.
Or yeah, even worse, with ourselves. That unsettling feeling where you suddenly say something that offends someone, or you enthusiastically throw yourself into some project only to realize later it was, quite foolish. And you're left wondering, where did that come from? It feels like some anger and tension from within has leaked out.
Precisely. And these aren't isolated incidents, They are, in fact, symptoms of deeper, often unconscious forces at play, both within us and within others. And it's really critical to understand that our immediate conscious thoughts, they're often just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to motivation.
Right.
They're these powerful underlying currents, frequently rooted in our primitive past, that influence our modern decisions and interactions, often completely without our awareness.
Wow.
So this initial confusion we feel, it's actually a crucial entry point. It's an invitation to look deeper beyond the immediate action to the true drivers underneath.
Yeah.
It's key for genuine self-mastery and for developing a more realistic view of human behavior.
That's a powerful idea. Our deep past molding modern behavior. It makes so much sense because I've definitely felt that confusion myself. Greene really highlights how susceptible we still are to the moods and emotions of people around us. We unconsciously imitate others. We want what they have. We get swept up in these viral feelings of anger or outrage. We imagine we're acting of our own free will, but we're deeply affected by what he calls social contagion.
Yeah, this social contagion, this almost automatic spread of emotions, attitudes, behaviors within a group, it's like a collective emotional ripple effect.
Right.
It's a really clear legacy of our primitive past.
Right.
I mean, just think about how quickly a mood can shift in a meeting, right? Or how outrage just explodes across social media.
Oh, yeah. Instantly.
And beyond that, other primal drives continue to mold our daily behavior, like our inherent need to constantly rank ourselves and measure our self-worth through our status.
The status game.
Exactly. It's observable not just in hunter-gatherer cultures, but even among chimpanzees. This isn't something we just learned from modern society. It's a fundamental drive. embedded deep within us, influencing everything from career ambitions to, the car we drive.
And the tribal instincts dividing people into insiders or outsiders, that feels incredibly alive today, doesn't it? Especially with how groups form online and offline, creating echo chambers, reinforcing biases.
Oh, absolutely. It's ancient, but feels very now.
Yeah.
And to these, we have to add the concept of the mask and the shadow.
Okay.
The need to wear masks to disguise any behavior that is frowned upon by the tribe. That's what leads to the formation of a shadow personality.
A shadow.
Yeah, this shadow is basically a compilation of all the dark desires, the impulses, the traits we repress because they're deemed unacceptable in society or even by our own conscious self-image. Our ancestors kind of understood this, right? They often attributed these urges to spirits or demons that needed exorcism.
Right.
Today, we just rely on a different myth, that convenient excuse. Oh, something came over me, or I wasn't myself. It's a rationalization that lets us avoid confronting the parts of ourselves we don't like.
So why is recognizing these primal forces, this unconscious imitation, the status drive, tribalism, this hidden shadow, why is that so important for us, the listener, in navigating daily life? From the office to Twitter, what's a practical takeaway?
Well, because it allows us to see beyond the surface of interactions. If you understand that someone's sudden outburst might be their repressed shadow popping out under stress,
Okay.
or that a group's extreme outrage is maybe fueled by primal tribal instincts, you can respond with more clarity, less emotional entanglement.
Right. You don't take it so personally.
Exactly. You realize it's not necessarily about you. It shifts your perspective from being like a bewildered victim to being an informed observer. This helps you recognize the deeper patterns, which in turn lets you anticipate behavior better, manage your own reactions, and avoid getting swept up in negative dynamics that just waste your energy and derail your goals. You gain the ability to step back and analyze rather than just reacting emotionally.
Okay, so if we're constantly wearing these masks, that brings us to something Greene calls the shadow self. Can you unpack what that is for us and why it's so critical to understand?
Absolutely. This hidden aspect, the shadow, it's defined as that compilation of repressed, dark desires, impulses, traits buried deep within us.
Right.
Greene emphasizes it becomes most active in moments of stress or when deep wounds get triggered, or maybe as people get older and just get tired of wearing the masks they've worn for so long.
Makes sense.
And because we rarely see this shadow in ourselves or others, the people we interact with often remain, somewhat strangers to us. It's like we only see a flat, two-dimensional image of them, their agreeable social side.
Yeah.
But knowing the contours of their shadow, as Greene puts it, transforms this. You start seeing people in 3 dimensions. And this ability is a critical step in understanding human nature. It lets us anticipate behavior under stress, understand hidden motives, and avoid getting, dragged under by any self-destructive tendencies. It's about seeing the whole person, not just the polished facade.
That makes so much sense. So how can we actually spot these hidden dimensions in others? What are the clues? How do we decipher the shadow, especially when people are trying so hard to project a certain image, maybe even an overly positive one?
Well, you look for contradictory behavior. Greene highlights people with really emphatic traits, like unusual confidence, maybe exceptional niceness, sort of saintly aura, or an intimidating intellect.
Okay.
If you observe closely, you might notice a slight exaggeration to these traits, as if they were performing or laying it on just a little too thick.
Trying too hard.
Exactly. This overcompensation is often a clue to what they're trying to hide, or maybe what they deeply fear. The greater the stridency in what they say, Greene notes, the deeper the underlying insecurities and doubts.
Wow.
It's a crucial warning. Don't be taken in by the strength of people's convictions or their flair for drama, especially from those who seem too perfect. True confidence often speaks much more softly.
That's such a counterintuitive point. The more certain someone seems, the more insecure they might actually be underneath. It really makes you question things.
It definitely encourages a healthy skepticism, which is, a core skill for understanding human nature.
Right.
Greene also discusses what he calls the rigid rationalist. This is someone who intensely represses their primitive, irrational side.
Okay.
These individuals become terribly uncomfortable with anything that isn't clear and analytical. They crave logic, certainty, often dismissing anything emotional or intuitive.
I know the type.
Right. And the irony, as Greene points out, is that even devout atheism, while logical within its own framework, still relies on a form of belief in the non-existence of God, which can't be definitively proven.
Interesting point.
This very rigidity can be a manifestation of their own discomfort with the messy, unpredictable, and often irrational parts of human nature, including their own. Recognizing this helps you understand that everyone, regardless of their outward persona or intellectual claims, has these irrational tendencies. Nobody is purely logical, and the attempt to be so can itself be a tell.
This brings us nicely to the illusions we create and fall for. The idea that people believe they're rational, yet their actions lead to chaos. It reminds me of Pericles, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, surveying the Athenian political scene, he noticed something really profound. All the political figures thought they were rational, right? Had realistic goals, smart plans. They worked hard for their factions, trying to expand the empire, brought in money.
Seemed logical on the surface.
Totally. Yet when things backfired, they always had excellent reasons. Blaming the opposition, even blaming the gods.
Classic scapegoating.
Exactly. And this is where Pericles' genius came in. He wondered, if they were all so rational, why was Athens in so much chaos and self-destructiveness? Why was the democracy so fragile, so much corruption and turbulence?
Good question.
His simple answer was, they weren't rational at all. They were merely selfish and shrewd. What truly guided their decisions were base emotions, hunger for power, attention, and money.
The real drivers.
Right. For those purposes, sure, they could be tactical and clever, engage in political maneuvering, but their actions didn't lead to anything lasting or really serve the overall interests of the democracy. It's a powerful historical example of this problem of irrationality at the highest levels. People deluding themselves.
Deluding themselves into believing they're acting for noble reasons, when actually, these primal emotions are totally at the helm. It happens all the time.
So what is this high-grade irrationality that Greene mentions? It sounds incredibly dangerous. When you talk about people's emotions getting inflamed, I immediately think of how quickly online discussions can just spiral out of control. Is that what we mean, or is it even deeper?
It's deeper, but yeah, online spirals are a great example of its outward manifestation. High-grade irrationality happens when our emotions, usually due to pressure or maybe intense focus, become so inflamed that they basically hijack our reasoning.
Okay.
As we dwell on anger or excitement, resentment, suspicion, these feelings intensify into what Greene calls a reactive state.
Reactive state.
Yeah. Everything we see or hear gets interpreted through the lens of that dominant emotion. We become hypersensitive, prone to further emotional reactions. Impatience can bleed into deep distrust.
Wow.
Leading to what Greene calls crises, conflicts, and disastrous decisions. Things like sudden violence, manic obsessions, uncontrollable greed, or that destructive desire to control others. It's not just a bad mood. It's a complete distortion of reality, a key source of acute problems, personally and professionally.
That's terrifying. So how do we recognize this? In ourselves or in others? Are there specific red flags we should look out for?
Absolutely. Look for rising pressure. Stress and tension can reveal flaws in people that they have carefully concealed from view.
The pressure cooker reveals all.
Pretty much. When the stakes are high, the cool mask of self-control comes off. They might suddenly lash out, reveal a paranoid streak, become really petty, or make impulsive decisions.
Right.
Greene advises that it's wise to observe people in such moments to truly judge their true character. This isn't about setting traps, obviously, but about understanding how individuals genuinely operate under duress. That's often when their true motivations surface.
Okay.
And for you, the listener, recognizing these reactive states in yourself allows you to pull back before we do something we regret. It's about developing self-awareness in those high-stakes moments, giving yourself a chance to cool down and regain control before acting from that place of emotional distortion.
It's fascinating how much we project our own need for certainty onto others, isn't it? This conviction bias, the idea that if someone believes something so strongly, it must be true.
Oh yeah, it's powerful.
Greene argues that when we hold on to an idea that is secretly pleasing to us, maybe we deep down have doubts, so we go an extra mile to convince ourselves, and we loudly contradict anyone who challenges us. We end up mistaking vehemence for truth.
That's a brilliant observation, and it's clearly revealed in our relationship to leaders, or really anyone trying to persuade us. If they express an opinion with, heated words and gestures, colorful metaphors and entertaining anecdotes, and that deep well of conviction, we often just assume they've examined the idea carefully and must be right.
Right. They seem so sure.
Exactly. Conversely, those who express nuances, whose tone is more hesitant, maybe more balanced, they're often seen as weak, self-doubting, sometimes even deceitful.
It's backward, really.
It kind of is. And this bias makes us highly susceptible to salesmen and demagogues who expertly display conviction as a way to convince and deceive. They understand people are hungry for entertainment and certainty, so they cloak their half-truths with dramatic effects, knowing that the strength of their delivery can often trump the validity of their argument. It's a powerful and often exploited illusion.
And it feeds right into our modern craving for significance, which Greene says, in a world where religions and great causes have lost their binding power, is stronger than ever. This energy, instead of being directed outward, is now often channeled inward, leading people to expand their sense of self, to feel great and superior.
Yeah.
This is the phenomenon of grandiosity.
Yeah, this intense self-worship, and it often has early roots. Greene explains how early pampering can mark individuals for life, turning them into masters at manipulating others to pamper them and shower them with attention. He gives the example of Michael Eisner, the former Disney CEO. Apparently, his mother met his every need and sheltered him, fostering this lifelong sense of entitlement and an unwavering belief in his own greatness.
Wow.
These individuals, they don't really alternate between feeling small and feeling great. They only know the latter. They believe they're uniquely blessed or destined. And this deeply ingrained sense of superiority drives them to constantly seek validation and attention.
And these grandiose leaders often create common illusions, right? One is, I am destined. They try to give the impression they were chosen for greatness, crafting these elaborate myths about their childhood or tales of impossible odds.
Oh yeah, the origin story.
Exactly, as if the future great leader was always in gestation.
Indeed. And Greene says you must be deeply skeptical when you hear those stories. They're forging a myth, one they've probably come to believe themselves through sheer repetition and self-reinforcement. You need to look for the more mundane facts behind the tales of destiny.
Good advice.
Another common illusion is emphasizing their cultural tastes over class. You know, these leaders might ridicule elites, yet depend entirely on their support. They pretend to have the same culinary tastes as the public, enjoy the same movies or sports to seem relatable,
Right, one of the people.
while in reality, they're flying first class and wearing expensive custom-made suits. This allows them to appear to embody an entire nation or interest group, making it seem like following them is loyalty to the group itself, and criticizing them is betraying the cause. It's a powerful way to manipulate collective identity for personal gain.
A great, if maybe troubling example of this is Richard Nixon. Greene argues he became increasingly anxious about his public image and badgered his staff, even Henry Kissinger, to constantly promote his strong leadership style as Mr. Peace. He was apparently desperate to know what the elites in Georgetown were saying about him, whether they were finally changing their minds.
Yeah, despite his outward nervousness and the fact that he was already way ahead in the polls by 72, Nixon craved this complete landslide in mandate from the public.
Right.
This intense drive led him to basically rail at his chief of staff, Bob Haldeman, demanding they spy on Democrats and get some dirt. He explicitly said he wanted a team of nut cutters for the dirty work, maximum efficiency.
Oh, nut cutters.
Yeah. And this connects directly to the destructive behavior stemming from an unexamined dark side. His deep-seated anxiety and profound grandiosity fueled this relentless descent into unethical actions. It just illustrates the dangers of that kind of unbridled ambition when it goes unchecked by self-awareness or any genuine purpose. It's a chilling reminder of how personal insecurity can corrupt public office.
It really is. And a powerful warning for us, the listener, to recognize and resist the allure of such types, lest we become unwitting followers in their destructive path.
Definitely.
And sometimes these grand illusions, or maybe just a desperate craving for meaning, lead us down what Greene calls false paths to purpose, the ones that are so easy, popular, and cheap.
Yes, and the consequences are severe. These false purposes lead downward to the animal side of our nature, to addictions, loss of mental powers, mindless conformity, cynicism. Individuals become alienated from themselves, often transforming into workaholics without a true calling, which can lead to profound depression or manic states. Just think of someone chasing fleeting pleasures or external validation without any deeper meaning. It's like a treadmill that never truly satisfies.
That's the trap, isn't it?
Huh.
We crave purpose, and these false paths offer this easy, immediate gratification that ultimately leaves us feeling emptier.
Exactly.
Greene also talks about hyperintention, like desperately needing to sleep or wanting to give the absolute best talk or needing to find a partner right now. The hyper-anxious focus on the result often makes performance suffer, creating this self-fulfilling prophecy of failure.
It's a profound paradox, isn't it? The most pleasurable things in life occur as a result of something not directly intended and expected. When we try to force happy moments or force a specific outcome, they tend to disappoint because the pressure just destroys the natural flow and joy.
Yeah.
So the critical strategy for you, the listener, is to eliminate the impulse toward these lower forms of purpose. If you can identify and consciously resist that urge for instant gratification, for external validation, or for a superficial sense of belonging,
Okay.
Greene suggests naturally gravitate toward the higher in your unavoidable search for true meaning. It's about clearing the path for genuine fulfillment rather than chasing these fleeting, manufactured highs that just leave you feeling hollow.
This leads us perfectly into the art of seeing and influencing others, starting with empathy. Greene argues that we all naturally possess the most remarkable tool for connecting to people and attaining social power: empathy. When it's cultivated, it allows us to see into the moods and minds of others, anticipate their actions, and even gently lower their resistance.
It's fundamentally about turning our sensitivity outward instead of inward. Our habitual self-absorption, our inherent narcissism, really it blunts this tool. It makes us blind to the true feelings and needs of others.
Right.
So the mission here is to come to terms with this natural self-love, but then consciously learn to direct our attention and sensitivity toward others. It's about actively understanding their perspective, truly stepping into their shoes, not just assuming what they might be thinking or feeling.
It's not just about being nice then.
No, not at all. It's strategic. It's a deeply insightful way to build rapport and influence.
And the example of Ernest Shackleton's expedition, that's a real masterclass in this, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Despite the incredibly dire circumstances, stranded in the Antarctic, he developed this increasingly sharp attunement to the men's shifting moods.
Amazing.
He'd walk up to each man around the campfire, engage them in their specific interests, science, poetry, whatever it was. He truly got into their particular spirit, as Greene puts it.
Yeah.
And he was especially attentive to any problems or unspoken anxieties. Like, for example, when they ran out of food for the cook's beloved pet cat. Instead of just ordering it killed, Shackleton volunteered to do it himself, understanding the profound emotional toll it would take on the cook.
Wow, that's leadership.
It really is. In another instance, he noticed the physicist, who was more used to intellectual pursuits, struggling with the physically demanding labor of cutting ice.
Okay.
Without making him feel like he was shirking his duty, Shackleton changed his roster to lighter but equally important tasks, like meticulously cataloging scientific samples. These were acts of deep practical empathy. It shows empathy isn't just a feeling, it's a strategic understanding that leads to genuine influence and stronger, more resilient relationships by recognizing and addressing the unspoken needs of others.
Beyond empathy, decoding nonverbal cues seems absolutely key to understanding people beyond their words. Greene reminds us we're all such good actors that we're not even aware of this.
Yeah, it's true.
Subtly changing what you say, your tone of voice, your mannerisms, your whole body language for different people, your family, your boss, your colleagues.
We totally take these skills for granted, but you can observe it just by watching yourself interact with different people. For those you want to impress or manage, you wear a much different face than with people you're comfortable with. And the clues to true feelings are often in those subtle signs. For example, when you first approach someone who maybe harbors negative thoughts toward you, if you surprise them, you'll clearly see signs of displeasure at your approach. Maybe a momentary tightening of the jaw, a flicker in the eyes before they have time to put on their affable mask.
The mask goes up fast.
Super fast.
Yeah.
Or if you're expressing a strong opinion and their eyes just begin to roll, which they then try to quickly cover up with a smile. These fleeting micro-expressions, often lasting less than a second, can reveal true feelings long before words do.
And what about signs that indicate you're gaining agreement? Or maybe even falling under someone's spell, as Greene puts it. What should we look for there?
Well, when people start to feel comfortable, they'll stand closer to you or lean in, their arms not folded or revealing any tension.
Okay, open body language.
Exactly. If you're talking, frequent head nods, attentive gazes, and genuine smiles indicate agreement and that they are losing their resistance. They'll make more sustained eye contact with you.
Right.
But the best and most exciting sign of all is synchrony. Unconscious mirroring.
Mirroring.
Yeah. Their legs might cross in the same direction as yours. Their head tilts similarly. One smile naturally induces another. At the deepest level, as the legendary hypnotist Milton Erickson discovered, even breathing patterns falling into the same rhythm can occur.
Wow, breathing patterns.
Yeah, potentially leading to the complete synchrony of a kiss. This subconscious mirroring is a powerful indicator of deep rapport and comfort.
That's incredible. And Greene also highlights a subtle but effective nonverbal way of asserting dominance through what he calls the symptom. Can you explain that one?
Yes, this is a fascinating and often really frustrating dynamic. One partner, or maybe even a subordinate, might suddenly develop headaches or some other illness, or starts drinking, subtly forcing the other person to tend to their weaknesses.
Mm.
And by doing so, they gain this quiet form of power through sympathy and obligation.
Ah, weaponized vulnerability.
Kind of, yeah. It's the subconscious weaponization of vulnerability, where perceived helplessness becomes a lever for control. It's not always conscious manipulation, but it can be an ingrained pattern.
Okay.
Finally, using these cues, Greene advises caution with leaders who are riddled with insecurities that poke through non-verbally. They tend to do poorly over time and can drag you down, so it's often best to avoid aligning with them.
Makes sense.
In contrast, rising stars, full of self-belief and a sense of destiny, they emit this positive energy, and rising with them might be a wise strategic move. But always, always avoid those arrogant and petty despots who demand lip service without giving anything in return. They will just drain you without ever reciprocating.
That's a really useful framework for assessing who to align with. And when it comes to actually influencing others, why do our arguments so often fail when we're trying to convince people? Greene states that directly arguing, lecturing, or cajoling just makes them more defensive.
Yeah, because people are naturally stubborn and resistant to influence. Our immediate instinct when challenged is to defend our position, right? Not to listen.
Totally. The walls go up.
Exactly. So the key, as Greene emphasizes, is to begin by lowering their resistance and never inadvertently feeding their defensive tendencies. This means training yourself to discern their insecurities and never inadvertently stir them up, and always thinking in terms of their self-interest and the self-opinion they need validated. It's about meeting them where they are, not confronting them head on.
So how do we actually do that? What are the 3 scenarios Greene outlines for convincing someone effectively?
Right, Greene lays out a clear progression. The first and least effective is challenging self-opinion. This just makes people feel stupid or brainwashed and instantly puts up walls that will never come down. You're attacking their identity, not just their idea.
Okay, so avoid that.
Definitely. The second is maintaining a neutral position, being reasonable and calm. This avoids tightening them up defensively and leaves some room to maneuver. It allows for a more open exchange, though it still might not lead to full agreement.
Better, but maybe not enough.
Right. But the most effective approach, Greene says, is instilling inner security.
Yeah.
This involves mirroring their values, showing that you genuinely like and respect them, appreciating their wisdom, generating an atmosphere of mutual warmth. Getting them to laugh together creates rapport and lowers their guard significantly. And this approach works best, of course, if it's not entirely faked. Cultivating genuine empathy, like we talked about, makes it feel authentic and therefore much, much more powerful.
That sounds way more effective than just rattling off facts. The story of the therapist Milton Erickson is a great example of this linguistic prowess and how he lowered resistance. He agreed to a friendly divorce with a religious husband. That seems counterintuitive for a therapist.
It does, and that's the genius of it.
Right.
So the husband and wife were from very religious families. They got married mainly to please their parents, and they found sex really awkward. The husband wanted a friendly divorce.
Okay.
Instead of arguing or probing into why, Erickson readily agreed with him. He used the husband's own language and premised something like, a friendly divorce. Yes, that sounds like a good idea. Tell me, how exactly would a friendly divorce work, given your religious beliefs?
Playing it back to him.
Exactly. By validating the husband's initial premise and language, Erickson subtly lowered his resistance and opened the door for genuine communication and influence, rather than directly opposing his starting position. It allowed the husband to explore his own motivations more deeply on his own terms.
Clever. And then there's the art of subtle flattery and mirroring. Greene notes that the most effective courtiers, for instance, don't just heap generic praise. They tailor it to a leader's specific insecurities. Like if everyone praises a leader's business acumen, a truly wise courtier would praise their cultural refinement, hitting a less obvious, maybe more vulnerable point of pride.
Exactly. That direct, targeted flattery is powerful.
Yeah.
But beyond that, mirroring ideas and values without using the exact same words is an even more highly effective form of indirect flattery.
Okay.
This leads to what Greene calls the mirrorer type of courtier, those who are most successful. because they subtly reflect people's own moods and ideas, making them feel validated without sensing the manipulation.
Ah, so it feels natural.
Right. If you mirror someone's passion for a hobby, or maybe echo their subtle disdain for some common annoyance, you tap into that inherent narcissism in everyone. You make them feel profoundly understood and admired. It's incredibly powerful because it feels like they found a kindred spirit, not someone trying to influence them.
Finally, in this section, we need to know who we're dealing with. Greene identifies several difficult character types we should be aware of. First, the wronged party. What should we look out for there?
Okay, these individuals have a pattern of many falling outs with people, relationships, jobs, friendships, you name it. But here's the key thing. They always see themselves as the wronged party. Always.
Never their fault.
Never. They hold a long memory and can spend years getting back at you for perceived slights, no matter how minor. Greene's advice is clear. Avoid them if you can. If you can't, use extreme caution, because it will inevitably make you feel guilty for something eventually. Their narratives are completely self-serving, and you'll always end up being cast as the villain.
Yikes. Okay, good to know. And then there's the drama magnet. I think we all know one of these types. What defines them?
Yeah. They draw you in with their exciting presence, maybe unusual energy and stories, their wit. But Greene reveals their deep pattern. They learned as kids that the only way to get lasting love and attention was to enmesh their parents in their troubles, which had to be big enough troubles to engage them emotionally. This becomes a lifelong habit. Most people shrink from confrontation, right? But drama magnets seem to live for it. They're constantly creating crises and always positioning themselves as the victim in the story. They thrive on the attention generated by conflict, making them incredibly exhausting to be around long term.
Definitely exhausting. What about someone with a lack of empathy? How do we spot that early on?
These are types who are often secretly drawn toward what they condemn. For instance, someone who is overly critical of, say, promiscuity might secretly harbor repressed desires for it, which is why they inevitably have a secret side.
Okay.
And you will likely become the target of their inquisition if you get too close, as they project their own internal conflicts onto you. The key is to notice their lack of genuine empathy early on, their inability to truly step into another's shoes, their dismissiveness of others' feelings, and then, crucially, keep your distance before you become a pawn in their internal drama.
Got it. Keep distance. And the envier's strategies. Envy is described as a painful sensation. How does that manifest in behavior?
Yeah, because envy is so painful. These types enact these lifelong strategies to mitigate or repress these feelings. They might just denigrate anything or anyone good, thinking, well, there's no one worth envying if they tear everyone else down.
Sour grapes.
Totally. Or they become extremely independent, believing they don't need anyone or anything good, kind of cutting themselves off. Sometimes they even devalue themselves, believing they don't deserve good things, which paradoxically lessens their envy of others. But these strategies, Greene warns, are brittle. They often break down under stress, and the latent envy is always there, ready to be directed at others.
And a subtle but insidious tactic, poisonous praise. I've definitely felt this one without quite being able to name it before.
Oh yeah, the envy bites. These are offhand comments expertly designed to get under your skin. Greene gives a classic example. If you've completed a creative project and it's well received, an envier might offer praise, but then subtly shift the focus. They might say, oh, congratulations on your success. I'm so happy for all the money you will now be making.
Ouch.
Exactly. They've praised you, but in a way that implies your main motivation was financial gain, not the creative work itself. You feel confused because they praised you, but it makes you deeply uncomfortable and implies ulterior motives on your part. It's a classic envy bite, designed purely to diminish your achievement.
Nasty.
Finally, when gauging leaders, Greene reiterates, be cautious of those riddled with insecurities that poke through non-verbally. They tend to do poorly over time and can drag you down. Contrastingly, rising stars full of self-belief and a sense of destiny emit that positive energy, and it might be wise to rise with them. But again, arrogant and petty despots should always be avoided as they demand lip service without giving anything in return.
That leads us perfectly into cultivating self-mastery and true purpose. Greene tells us that our character is deeply ingrained or stamped within us and compels us to act in certain ways beyond our awareness and control. This concept of superior character is really intriguing.
It is. Greene argues that our character, much like an engraving, is formed from elements that actually predate our conscious awareness. It's the sum of our ingrained habits, our patterns, our beliefs that dictate our repetitive actions, strategies, decisions. The brain itself reinforces this by forming neural pathways for repeated thoughts and actions.
Right.
So the question then becomes not how to erase this ingrained character, because you probably can't, but how we navigate it, particularly our aggressive impulses to channel them productively.
So there are different types of aggressors then. It sounds like there's a spectrum of how this fundamental human impulse manifests itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Greene outlines
Yes.
a clear spectrum. At one end, you have the primitive aggressors. They have short fuses, they explode when triggered, lack self-control. They tend to bully too many people and often don't get far in life because their aggression is unfocused and destructive.
Okay.
Then there are the sophisticated aggressors, who are much trickier. They often rise to the top by cloaking in their maneuvers, intimidating subtly, wearing people down by exploiting our docility and our natural aversion to conflict. They're calculating, subtle, and often very effective in their pursuit of power. But then there's also unconscious aggression, our everyday actions, like maybe forcefully helping others when they don't really want it, or using people for our own purposes without their full consent. These often stem from an unconscious comparison of our inner strength with others. We don't perceive it as aggression because it's not overt violence, yet it subtly underlies so much of our behavior and can be just as damaging in relationships.
It sounds like there's a profound split in modern society then, where people present themselves as, modest and progressive, but rampant aggression still runs wild in less obvious forms.
Precisely. I mean, consider the workplace. People constantly pushing forward, grabbing power, taking credit for others' ideas, maybe outright stealing them, all while maintaining this polite facade.
Yeah, happens all the time.
On social media, there's this delight in outrage and attacking others from behind a screen. The press exposes flaws in those in power, leading to these feeding frenzies. There's rampant violence in films and games, all masquerading as entertainment. And through it all, Greene notes, nobody admits to being aggressive. This split is profound. And this repression of aggressive impulses can also dampen our mental powers. It discourages bold thinking, fosters docility, leads to conventionality. Creative people, on the other hand, often display great aggressiveness in their thinking, a willingness to challenge norms, to forge new paths.
So the problem isn't aggression itself, but how we channel it? Is that the idea?
Yes, that's the core insight. The problem is not knowing how to harness this energy in an adult, productive, and pro-social manner. Aggression, Greene posits, is totally human and potentially positive.
Okay.
The solution is to tame and train it for our own purposes. Instead of being chronically aggressive or passively aggressive or completely repressed, we can make this energy focused and rational. When it's concentrated and sustained, it has immense force.
Right.
By doing this, we can recover some of that pure spirit we had as children, feeling bolder, more integrated, and more authentic. As the playwright Ibsen famously said, to live is to war with trolls in heart and soul. Meaning, to live authentically requires confronting and mastering our internal conflicts, including aggression.
That's a powerful call to embrace our full selves. And this idea of embracing inner duality with what Greene calls the law of gender rigidity is also fascinating. He states that all of us have masculine and feminine qualities.
Yeah, this is influenced by genetics and quite powerfully by the parent of the opposite sex during our formative years. However, Greene argues that the intense need for a consistent identity in society often makes us repress these qualities, over-identifying with the masculine or feminine role expected of us.
Okay.
And we pay a significant price for this. We lose valuable dimensions to our character, our thinking becomes rigid, and our relationships suffer as we project our own repressed fantasies and hostilities onto members of the opposite sex, creating unnecessary conflict and misunderstanding.
So our childhood self was more fluid. Then society comes along and sort of trims and tightens us up, forcing us into these specific roles.
Exactly. As children, Greene suggests we had a rather fluid sense of self, open to a wider range of emotions and experiences. But in youth, the pressure to shape a social self, to fit into a group, becomes immense. This involves trimming and tightening up our freer-flowing spirit, especially around gender roles. This often means repressing either masculine or feminine aspects to present a more consistent, socially acceptable self, leading to a loss of internal richness and adaptability.
This also explains contrasexual couples, like the composer Chopin and the writer George Sand. Can you elaborate on that relationship?
Certainly. Greene highlights how imbalanced individuals, those who have heavily repressed one side, often unconsciously seek partners who embody the opposite qualities they've repressed in themselves.
Seeking balance externally.
Right. In the case of Chopin and George Sand, Sand, known for her sharp intellect, independence, strong will, was in many ways more like the husband, embodying traits society often ascribed to men. Chopin, on the other hand, was delicate, highly emotional, dependent, more like the wife.
Interesting dynamic.
Yeah. Their relationship, while complex, allowed them to experience a form of internal balance through their partner. The profound task for each of us, Greene suggests, is to become aware of these lost masculine or feminine traits within ourselves and slowly reconnect to them. This process, he argues, unleashes creative powers, makes us more fluid in your thinking, and ultimately allows you to fascinate people by being authentically yourself, creating your own unique gender role instead of merely playing an expected one.
So if we're talking about finding our authentic purpose, what's the difference between what Greene calls a true purpose and a false purpose? This seems like such a critical distinction for living a meaningful life.
It is the defining distinction, truly. Greene describes true purpose as leading us upward to a more human level. This involves a continuous process of improving skills, sharpening our minds, realizing our full potential, and contributing meaningfully to society. It's an expansive, outward-looking path. In stark contrast, false purposes lead downward to the animal side of our nature, to addictions, loss of mental powers, mindless conformity, cynicism. These false purposes are seductive because they are easy, popular, and cheap. They offer immediate gratification or validation without demanding deep inner work.
Right, the easy way out.
Exactly. And crucially, Greene notes that all of us at some point fall for them. They make individuals alienated from themselves, often turning them into workaholics without a true calling, which inevitably leads to profound depression or manic states because they are living a life disconnected from their core essence.
And the uniqueness mandate. What does Greene mean by that exactly?
Right. Greene argues that cultivating your uniqueness and the originality that goes with it is paramount in this search for true purpose.
Yeah.
In a world increasingly populated by interchangeable people where skills can be commoditized and roles easily filled, you cannot be replaced if you develop your unique combination of talents, experiences, and perspectives. Your specific way of seeing the world and contributing to it is not replicable. This, he asserts, represents true freedom and the ultimate power we humans can possess. It's about discovering and then relentlessly expressing that singular spark that makes you uniquely you.
How do we develop this? What are some concrete strategies for cultivating a high sense of purpose, especially when there are so many distractions and obstacles pulling us away?
Greene outlines several powerful strategies. The first, and maybe the essential starting point, is embracing tedium and flow.
Tedium. That sounds counterintuitive.
Well, he explains that the initial boredom you feel in skill acquisition can actually be transformed into a pleasurable and addicting deep focus, that state of flow where ideas begin to come to us out of nowhere. This leads to faster learning and incredible creative energy. The strategy is to push through that initial discomfort, maybe break down the task into manageable chunks, celebrate mini victories to maintain momentum, and really allow yourself to get completely absorbed in the process.
Okay, push through the boredom to get to flow. What's next?
Second is overcoming obstacles. There are always many enemies and obstacles on the path to purpose. Distracting voices that instill doubts, both internal and external, boredom and frustrations with slow progress, lack of trustworthy criticism, or sometimes too much destructive criticism, anxiety, and eventually burnout. Greene advises that you must proactively identify these and work to move past them.
How?
Well, for distracting voices, maybe cultivate a quiet inner space, perhaps through journaling or mindful reflection, to discern genuine wisdom from just noise. For boredom, break tasks into smaller, rewarding segments. For anxiety, try to focus intensely on the immediate task at hand, not the overwhelming end goal.
What about seeking guidance, like Coco Chanel did? Her story sounds like a masterclass in finding strategic mentorship.
It truly is. Chanel started from a position of great weakness. An orphan with few resources, but this undeniable calling to design clothes. Yet she had zero business acumen. She desperately needed guidance for the practical, commercial side of things.
Right.
At 25, she met Arthur Boy Keble, a wealthy English businessman. She was attracted not just to his social standing, but crucially, to his ambition, his well-rounded experience, his knowledge of the arts, and his ruthless practicality, all qualities she lacked.
finding the missing pieces.
Exactly. Their relationship, both personal and professional, allowed her to launch her business. Her story shows how strategically seeking the right mentors, those who possess qualities and knowledge you genuinely need, is crucial to developing your purpose and turning a vision into a reality.
And the power of a collective purpose, that sounds like it would cut through a lot of the usual organizational dysfunction we see.
It absolutely does. When a group shares a real, shared, noble purpose, it fosters this high esprit de corps, a sense of unity, a shared mission.
Yeah.
This kind of group often polices itself with members holding each other accountable. It naturally isolates petty egos, leading to smoother operations and preventing those destructive factions from forming. Greene emphasizes that for a leader, this means you absolutely have to practice what you preach and consistently remind the group of its core mission to prevent drifting into self-serving agendas.
Right.
This shared purpose satisfies a deep, yet rarely met human need for belonging and meaning beyond just individual ambition. It creates incredible cohesion and effectiveness.
The story of Martin Luther King Jr.'s inner voice also powerfully illustrates purpose, especially in the face of immense pressure and danger.
King experienced this profound inner crisis where his intuitions actually transformed into an actual voice, the voice of God, clarifying his destiny and offering continual support. This wasn't merely a thought. It was a deeply felt transformative internal guidance system that neutralized negative emotions and provided relentless momentum. Even when he felt depleted, faced deep depression, feared for his life, this internal compass urged him forward, like his decision to go to Memphis to support the sanitation workers despite his exhaustion and the grave threats against him. It's a powerful testament to how a clear, authentic purpose can provide an unshakable foundation in the face of external chaos.
Queen Elizabeth I is another incredible example of leadership and purpose, specifically her ability to adapt and stay true to her mission over decades.
Her ability to learn from mistakes was absolutely key to her legendary reign. For instance, her execution of Mary Queen of Scots, while apparently going against her personal feelings, was done for the country's sake and ultimately gained her subjects' trust because it prioritized England's stability over her personal wishes.
Right, tough decisions.
Very tough. And she strategically understood her foreign rivals, like Philip II of Spain. He underestimated her as an unmarried queen, fearing conflict. She used that misjudgment to her advantage while relentlessly prioritizing securing England's finances as her core mission. Her unwavering focus on national well-being, even when it demanded personal sacrifice or politically unpopular decisions, allowed her to adapt and stay true to her purpose amidst immense external pressures and threats.
And Flannery O'Connor's will to create, even in the face of immense physical pain, is truly inspiring, perhaps the ultimate example of cultivating purpose against just daunting odds.
O'Connor's life is an incredible testament to unwavering purpose. Her early life was shaped by her father's pride and her eccentricity, which fostered her uniqueness and independent spirit. Later, battling lupus, an incredibly debilitating disease, and living with her mother, she displayed this fierce determination. Despite constant pain, increasing physical limitations, and sensing her own end was near, she was determined to squeeze out every last bit of consciousness to finish her stories, realizing her destiny as a writer.
Amazing fortitude.
Greene suggests that it was this absolute dedication to her calling that allowed her to lead a life of incomparable richness despite immense physical suffering. It just powerfully illustrates how purpose, when authentic and deeply cultivated, can provide profound meaning and momentum even in the most challenging circumstances imaginable.
Finally, mastering time and mortality. This seems like the ultimate self-mastery challenge. Greene talks about the illusion of time and how unconsciously disconnecting from the awareness of death leads to this loose and distended relationship to time.
It's a profound blind spot for most of us. We always have more time than is the reality. This leads to rampant procrastination, scattering our forces across too many trivial endeavors.
Guilty as charged.
Huh.
Me too.
And it ultimately causes this generalized anxiety as we feel our lives are just slipping away. The root of this, Greene explains, is that short-term thinking is hardwired into our system. Our ancient brain was designed to respond to immediate dangers or opportunities, focusing on dramatic features and missing the larger picture. This worked fine for primitive environments, but is really not suited to the complex world we now live in, where long-term planning and sustained effort are absolutely essential.
And our society's obsession with youth plays right into this denial, doesn't it?
Absolutely. We venerate youth and pathologically avoid aging objects or any signs of decay because they unconsciously remind us of the shortness of life. There's even this pervasive delusion that technology can somehow overcome death itself, which Greene calls the ultimate in human denial.
Mm.
This means despite all our advancements, we're really no stronger than our primitive ancestors in confronting this fundamental truth. We simply found new ways to delude ourselves into believing we're immortal.
So the power then lies in awakening to the shortness of life. How does that actually translate into practical living? How do we use that awareness?
Yes. This deliberate awareness, a conscious confrontation with our own mortality, can forge a far more committed and focused relationship to time, and it can powerfully cut through that generalized anxiety. It's about becoming, as Greene puts it, an archaeologist digging into your own past and that of your generation, examining memories with some distance, and releasing judgments about previous generations' perceived failures or successes.
Okay.
This allows you to mold your own relationship to the zeitgeist and become a formidable trendsetter rather than simply following or rebelling against your generation's norms. It frees you to define your own path on your own timeline.
And connecting to the future as an immortality strategy. That sounds almost paradoxical given we're talking about embracing death.
It does, but it makes sense. For those who feel maybe born into the wrong period in history, this strategy offers profound relief and a sense of enduring purpose. By understanding the cycles of history and knowing the pendulum will swing, that ideas, values, trends are cyclical, we could look to the future and feel some connection to those who are living well beyond this terrible moment.
Connecting across time.
Exactly. We can make them part of our audience, knowing they might one day read our words, appreciate our struggles, or carry forward our insights. This represents this supreme human ability to surmount one's time and the finality of death itself, finding a form of immortality, if you will, in the enduring impact of our ideas and contributions. #outro.
Wow. What an incredible deep dive into Robert Greene's The Laws of Human Nature. We've truly unpacked so much about how hidden forces within us and others, from ancient imprints to the shadow self, constantly influence behavior, often in ways we just don't realize.
Yeah, we've explored the subtle illusions we create and fall for, like irrationality and that pull towards grandiosity, and hopefully gain some insights into how to spot them. We've also discussed the profound power of empathy in influencing others, the subtle language of nonverbal cues, and some practical strategies for navigating resistance.
And we've identified some of those difficult character types to help you know who you're truly dealing with, hopefully arming you with a clearer understanding of social dynamics. Finally, we covered that path to self-mastery and true purpose. Harnessing inner aggression constructively, embracing our inner duality, finding our authentic calling, and the profound liberation that comes from mastering time through an awareness of life's, finite nature.
It's definitely a vast landscape human experience, isn't it? And these laws, they really offer a powerful map for navigating it all with, hopefully, greater clarity and effectiveness.
So consider this thought as we wrap up. If every interaction is an opportunity to practice seeing beyond the mask, and every personal challenge is really a chance to integrate a hidden part of yourself, what unexpected powers might you unlock? Not just in dealing with others, but in truly becoming yourself.
It's a journey of continuous discovery, isn't it? And the more you understand, the more agency you ultimately gain.